The numbers are brutal. Today, more than half of the world's wealth sits in the hands of less than 1% of humanity. That's not a modern tragedy. It's an ancient truth resurfacing. Power has always clustered in the grasp of a few, while the many struggle in shadows. Aristotle, centuries ago, cut through the illusions of virtue that poverty still hides behind. He warned, "Wealth is not the good we seek, but the means to the good." A chilling line, because it strips wealth of its illusions. Money itself is not happiness. It is not morality. It is not even the final goal. It is the gatekeeper. Without it, the good remains locked. Picture it. A poor man in rags walks into the market square. His body is tired, his hands calloused, his words barely heard. He is judged instantly, not for the truth of his soul, but for the weakness of his appearance. A wealthy man, cloaked in symbols, gold rings, fine robes, a retinue of allies, enters the same square. He too is judged instantly, not for his character, but for the weight of his image. And which one does the crowd obey? Aristotle understood this silent law of perception. Men do not weigh inner truth first. They bow to appearances, to the visible signs of power. And poverty, far from being noble, enslaves the poor man's image before he even speaks. This is the forgotten truth. Poverty is not just the absence of money. It is the presence of chains. It steals dignity. It dictates how others read your worth. And while the poor man might believe his inner virtue will one day shine through, Aristotle would tell him the harsher reality. Without wealth, that virtue remains trapped, unseen, unheard. We live in an age where the same law persists. Scroll through social media and you see it replayed daily. The suit on the stage commands attention long before his words are tested. The entrepreneur with polished branding secures investment before his idea is proven. The worker with nothing but sweat to offer is swallowed by silence, no matter how hard he labors. This is why Aristotle did not treat poverty as some divine moral trial. He treated it as a prison of the mind and the body. Poverty enslaves not only the belly, but also the spirit. It robs a man of political voice, strips him of the dignity to refuse, and makes him dependent on masters he will never meet. And so the truth cuts like a blade. You cannot worship poverty as virtue. Aristotle would call that self-deception. Poverty is not a badge of honor. It is a brand of ownership, one you wear until you fight your way out. Aristotle believed something most people today are too afraid to say aloud. Poverty corrupts. Not because the poor are born corrupt, but because desperation bends even the strongest spirit. When a man cannot feed his children, virtue becomes a luxury he cannot afford. When his stomach burns with hunger, he will trade honesty for survival, loyalty for wages, freedom for the smallest scrap of security. Poverty does not make saints, it makes slaves. Look closely at history, and you'll see this truth stamped across every empire. The poor filled the galleys of warships, chained to oars until their bodies broke. The poor tilled fields they did not own, their sweat enriching masters they would never dine beside. The poor became soldiers, mercenaries, and pawns in political games they never chose to play. Poverty was never noble. It was fuel for the ambitions of others. Aristotle saw this clearly. He argued that poverty is the root of political corruption, because men without means are easily bought. The citizen who cannot afford bread will sell his vote for it. The worker who cannot afford dignity will bend his back to any tyrant who promises wages. In Aristotle's words, poverty is the breeding ground of servility. It silences voices and sells freedom for coins. And the tragedy? This pattern has not changed. Only the chains have been polished. Today, it's payday loans instead of debt slavery. It's gig work instead of forced labor. It's endless subscription to wages instead of endless tribute to lords. The faces of the masters have shifted, from kings and princes to corporations and creditors, but the structure of dependence remains. The modern poor man works harder than the rich man ever will, yet his chains are invisible. Think about it. Who works longer hours? The CEO in the tower or the delivery rider in the rain? Who sweats more? The hedge fund manager or the warehouse worker on his 10th hour? Yet which one is judged as valuable? The cruel truth is this: the poor man may work harder, but the world reads his weakness first. Aristotle understood that without wealth, a man does not own his time. And when you do not own your time, you do not own your mind. You live on the leash of those who pay you. You think you are free because no shackles are on your wrists, but you cannot walk away from the paycheck. That is the modern chain, silent, invisible, unbreakable for those who never rise above it. This is why Aristotle called poverty a kind of enslavement. It is not just about hunger or lack. It is about dignity stolen, choices denied, voices silenced. Poverty makes a man easier to command, easier to ignore, easier to discard. And until you understand that, you will keep mistaking struggle for nobility. Struggle alone is not noble. Struggle without power is slavery dressed as perseverance. Aristotle did not glorify wealth for its luxury. He did not marvel at golden cups, silk garments, or banquets that drowned the senses. To him, wealth was never about comfort. It was about command. He drew a sharp line between two kinds of wealth. The first is survival wealth: food, shelter, clothing, the bare minimum needed to keep the body alive. This kind of wealth comforts, but it does not free. The second is power wealth, resources that buy time, influence, allies, and choices. This is the wealth that shapes destinies. The man who earns just enough to eat sleeps well for a night, but the man who controls the bread of others rules for a lifetime. Aristotle understood that wealth becomes true power only when it bends the wills of men, when it shifts the flow of politics, when it gives you the terrifying luxury of choice. Look at the modern world and the same law stands, sharper than ever. Jeff Bezos did not become powerful because he could eat at finer restaurants. He became powerful because he controlled the channels through which millions purchased their daily bread. Elon Musk did not dominate markets because of comfort. He did it because his wealth allowed him to gamble entire industries on his vision. Bernard Arnault did not rise by collecting luxury goods. He became untouchable by commanding the symbols of prestige that others crave. Survival wealth feeds you. Power wealth makes you the one others must feed. This distinction is why so many remain trapped in cycles of exhaustion. They mistake survival for security. They think a stable salary is freedom, when in truth, it is the most fragile chain. Comfort distracts you. It lulls you into believing you are safe while time drains away and choices slip from your hand. Aristotle's ruthless lesson is this: wealth that merely sustains you is still dependency. You are not free if you must wake tomorrow to labor for another man's command. True freedom begins only when your wealth buys time you cannot be forced to surrender. And here lies the dark paradox. Comfort wealth makes you feel alive while keeping you dependent. Power wealth may demand risk, sacrifice, and cunning, but it is the only wealth that frees. Most people cling to survival because it feels certain. Few pursue command because it feels dangerous. Yet only the dangerous road breaks chains. Aristotle would have called it plainly. The man who eats well is rich for a night. The man who controls others' bread is rich forever. Ask yourself, are you chasing comfort or are you chasing command? Because the two roads do not meet. Aristotle understood a truth that still governs human nature. Men obey not truth, but what they see. It doesn't matter if you are brilliant, honest, or virtuous. If you wear the mask of poverty, the world reads weakness before it hears your voice. Appearances, not essence, direct obedience. In Aristotle's Athens, honor and prestige were public currencies. To appear wealthy, to appear noble, was often more valuable than actually being so. A man with polished robes and a confident stride commanded attention long before he spoke. A man in tattered rags could speak the same words, yet his voice would dissolve into the wind. This law has not died. It has only grown sharper in an age of screens. Modern prosperity is not measured only by what you own, but by what you can project. The startup founder in a tailored suit, commanding billions in credit he does not yet possess, holds more power than the honest worker with cash in hand but no stage. The illusion of wealth often buys more obedience than the reality of it. Why? Because perception is leverage. When men see wealth, they assume competence. When they see poverty, they assume failure. They are not weighing the truth of your being. They are reacting to the surface. Aristotle, pragmatic to the bone, urged us to confront this reality rather than deny it. The mask of prosperity is not a costume. It is a weapon. It allows you to negotiate from strength before the battle begins. It allows you to secure allies before you have proved your worth. It allows you to bend the will of others, not by truth, but by spectacle. Think about it. Banks lend to those who appear stable, not necessarily those who are. Investors pour billions into founders who wear the costume of success, even when the foundations are fragile. Politicians win votes not by inner virtue, but by projecting the aura of authority. And you? If you show up looking beaten, the world will treat you as beaten. If you show up cloaked in strength, the world will test you less. This is not fair. It is not noble. But it is the law Aristotle saw clearly. Society bows first to the mask, and only later, maybe, to the truth. The poor man believes that if he works harder, people will eventually respect him. Aristotle would shake his head. Respect is not earned through sweat. It is earned through perception. Sweat without a mask of prosperity looks like desperation. Sweat with a mask looks like strength. So ask yourself, what mask do you wear? Do you let the world see your hunger, or do you cloak it until obedience has already been won? Because the mask of prosperity is not deception. It is survival. Aristotle knew one of the most seductive lies a man can whisper to himself. I have enough. It sounds like wisdom. It feels like contentment. But beneath its calm surface hides surrender. Because the man who declares he has enough has already decided he will never reach higher. He has chosen the safety of smallness over the risk of greatness. Aristotle warned against this false virtue of contentment. To him, wealth was not about piling coins for the sake of greed. It was about equipping yourself with the freedom to act. To stop accumulating before true independence is gained is to stop short of liberty itself. Look at the modern middle class, the so-called safe zone. Salaries that pay the bills, mortgages that cage families in 30-year contracts, savings accounts that grow slower than inflation devours them. This is not freedom. This is dependency wrapped in comfort. A velvet chain still binds the neck. The middle class believes they are safe because they have steady wages, but steady wages are the clearest proof of dependence. A salary is a master's ration dressed up as stability. He who accepts wages alone dies in wages alone. The house he pays off is still chained to a bank. The job he serves can vanish with a single restructuring. His enough is always borrowed time. Aristotle would have called this the quietest form of poverty, the trap where men confuse stability with sovereignty. A man who stops reaching, who stops climbing, has not found peace. He has simply settled into a smaller cage. Think of the countless workers who spend decades trading their time for wages, waiting for retirement to finally live. But retirement itself is built on the illusion that survival wealth equals freedom. What happens when health fades before wealth grows? What happens when inflation eats what they saved? The dream of enough collapses into the nightmare of dependence. And here lies Aristotle's ruthless clarity. Ambition is not greed. It is survival of the spirit. To stop striving before you own your life is to choose slavery willingly. Poverty is not only found in hunger, it is found in the man who lowers his sights until the ceiling feels like the sky. The poor man says, "If I only had a little more, I'd be content." The middleman says, "I have enough. I don't need more." Both are prisoners. The first admits his chains. The second paints his chains gold and calls it happiness. The man who understands Aristotle's law knows there is no enough until you own your freedom outright. Wages can never buy it. Comfort can never grant it. Only ownership can. So ask yourself, have you found freedom, or have you found a comfortable cage? Aristotle saw wealth not as an end, but as an amplifier. It does not create character, it exposes it. He wrote that virtue is a mean between extremes, but when money enters the equation, that balance is tested like never before. The poor man hides his flaws because he has no stage, but the rich man, his stage is the world, and every vice or virtue is magnified 100-fold. This is why Aristotle warned that wealth is not salvation, it is revelation. Money does not change men, it unmasks them. The tyrant who gains wealth does not suddenly become cruel. He finally has the tools to build monuments to his cruelty. The generous man who gains wealth does not suddenly become kind. He finally has the power to give beyond his own survival. Wealth, then, is a mirror held to the soul, reflecting what was already there, only larger, louder, impossible to ignore. Think of the modern landscape. Billionaires rise and the world debates, are they visionaries or are they villains? Elon Musk builds rockets and satellites, vision, innovation, audacity. Yet his critics see arrogance, recklessness, domination. Jeff Bezos builds empires of commerce, millions employed, goods at your doorstep. Yet his critics see exploitation, surveillance, and control. Bernard Arnault curates the symbols of prestige, luxury, beauty, elegance. Yet others see decadence, vanity, and greed. The wealth did not create these images, it only magnified them. Wealth reveals what men always were, in silence, when no one was watching. Aristotle's ruthless law is this: poverty hides vices in shadows, wealth broadcasts them from towers. This is why wealth is dangerous. It does not only free the virtuous, it frees the vicious. It does not only amplify justice, it amplifies corruption. A man without wealth may dream of tyranny, but he cannot enslave. A man without wealth may fantasize about decadence, but he cannot indulge. Give him wealth, and the mask falls away. The true soul is unleashed. And here lies the paradox. Society praises wealth, yet fears it. We look at the rich with awe and envy, yet also with suspicion. We sense instinctively what Aristotle declared openly. Wealth is power, and power unmasks. The question is not whether you should seek wealth. The question is whether you are prepared for what it will reveal about you. Are you building wealth to amplify your virtue, or will it magnify your corruption? Because once the mask is removed, there is no hiding again. Wealth makes your character undeniable, for better or worse. Aristotle's challenge is merciless. If you are weak, wealth will expose it. If you are corrupt, wealth will magnify it. But if you are disciplined, cunning, and virtuous, wealth will make you unstoppable. The poor man fears money will change him. Aristotle whispers the darker truth. Money only makes you impossible to hide. Aristotle left no room for illusions in the end. He who owns nothing can never be free. It is not enough to earn. It is not enough to save. To depend on another man's coin is to place your soul in his hands. Without ownership, you will always bow, whether to the master who pays you, the landlord who houses you, or the creditor who waits for his pound of flesh. Aristotle's final law is merciless. The world divides into two kinds of men: those who own and those who are owned. Look around today, and the pattern is the same. The man who rents his life piece by piece, his labor, his home, his hours, may feel free, but in truth, every part of him belongs to someone else. His time belongs to his employer. His home belongs to the bank. His future belongs to the government or the market. He survives by working, but he does not live. Now look at the man who owns assets, property, enterprises, things that earn even while he sleeps. He does not trade his time for survival. He trades survival for command. This man lives because he chooses when and where to act. He rules because others depend on his ownership to survive. And beyond ownership lies an even subtler weapon: appearance. To rule, you must not only own, you must appear as though you have always owned. The illusion of permanence is as powerful as the fact itself. Men trust those who seem unshakable, who project the aura of inevitability. The ruler is not merely wealthy, he looks eternal. This was Aristotle's ruthless wisdom. Ownership is the foundation of freedom, but the mask of ownership, the projection of command, is what makes men obey. So the final law cuts clean: own or be owned. There is no middle ground. You cannot rent freedom. You cannot borrow independence. You cannot wage slave your way to sovereignty. Without ownership, you will always belong to someone else. Picture two men. One survives by rising at dawn, laboring until dusk, collapsing into sleep only to repeat the cycle. He has enough to eat, enough to rest, enough to keep going, but nothing that is his. He is alive, but not free. The other man owns. He owns land, tools, time, or symbols. He does not labor to survive. Others labor for him. His wealth builds even in his absence. He lives because he commands. He rules because he owns. And now the challenge is yours. Do not merely survive. Do not merely work. Seek ownership of assets, of time, of destiny. Because in Aristotle's world and in ours, there are only two paths. You wear the chains, or you hold the keys. If you refuse the chains, declare it now. Comment, I choose ownership. Make it your ritual of commitment.